minute. Right on time.
Here we go, right on time.
Mr. Jay Weidner.
Hey, how's it going?
Jay, how's it going? Welcome. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah.
Going to give you a brief introduction.
Okay.
Our guest today, Jay Weidner, is our distinguished gentleman and knight of the round table in our time, on a great quest to teach truth seekers and creative types how to prepare for the Aquarian age. His areas of expertise include filmmaking, esoteric Hollywood, and alchemy, especially the films of Stanley Kubrick. His insights are a central focus of the excellent documentary Room 237 about The Shining, his documentaries Kubrick's Code 1 and 2, which are must-see, and his feature film The Last Avatar are still available all on the Gaia Network, as well as my favorite series on that network with Jay Dyer called Esoteric Hollywood. I'm honored to welcome to our show Mr. Jay Weidner.
Hey, thanks for inviting me.
Thanks for coming on, Jay.
Thanks for being here.
on. So, Jay, we've been fans of you for a while.
Yeah.
And we've been listening to your stuff. And, I feel like, I was listening to your podcast with David, and you were talking about how...
Reality Check?
Yeah, Reality Check. And we were talking about how you thought him and McKenna were two of the most interesting boomers. I said I would have to label you in there also.
Yeah.
Your perspective has definitely contributed to us and how we look at things as well.
Well, it's good to hear. That's kind of why I did it.
That's awesome. Yeah.
All right. So there's one movie that I'd like to get your opinion on. Can we talk movies a little bit?
Sure.
All right.
Movies.
It's one I haven't heard you mention, and I've listened to every episode of Reality Check, and it's been a number of years I've been following your work, but The Sting with Paul Newman and Robert Redford. Do you think that is a Freemasonic movie, or what's your take on a film like that?
Well, it could be. I can see why you would think so because of the way that they manipulated the future, and they knew what was going to happen. And that was a real sting, by the way. It was a famous book about it that the guy who wrote the screenplay had read, I guess.
Wow.
It was a little hardly anybody knew, but yeah, it's not from the 1920s that the book came out, I believe, and it wasn't called The Sting. It was about how you do a elaborate con job by a con artist. Yeah, it's like a long con, yeah, and so that's why when that and since Hollywood is full of con men. They'd all read the book, so they knew where he got the story from. So I think that's the main reason Hollywood gave all these awards to everybody but the screenwriter. He didn't get anything because all the con men, we know where you got that story. But yeah, I can see where he would think that, and yeah, I can see that.
Okay.
Very interesting.
Do you see any connection between that and the Q has a phrase something like, this is a global sting operation. Is there any reality imitates art going on there in your mind?
Well, we are in a global sting operation, that's for sure. And it's I use the analogy of the carnival during the 20s and 30s in the United States, the teens too. But so they would roam from town to town, and they would come in. They'd have sexy women and fake fights every night with fake blood in their mouth and drugs, opium-laced bottles of stuff being for sale. And after about 2 weeks, the whole town has been fleeced, especially the men, because they would come in and they would be kind of a dumb country western dude, and he'd open up his wallet and show all his money, and then somebody would pat him on the shoulder, and that would be the mark. And so that everywhere he went through the carny, every single, person that's working there is, there's the mark. Okay. Hey, yeah, you can win this one. Come on, or, the women and the whole thing. And So yeah, I think that's what's going on a worldwide scale. We're like a gigantic carnival, and the media is the carnival, and they're presenting all the stuff, and drugs are everywhere, and we're being fleeced like crazy, and we're going to wake up, and we're not going to have any money, and then we're going to light our torches and come after the carney. But unfortunately, the carney is going to have already escaped because they've got inside agents, and they will have already escaped, and they will cause some kind of gigantic conflagration in their wake to hide their exit, and we will all have to go put out whatever conflagration that they've caused, and it's their routine, and it's been going on for hundreds of years. It was going on in Europe before America, and it's what a bunch of gangsters do when they get together, and now the gangsters are operating across the boundaries of the nation state and even the global state, and so we extraditing these guys from us is our major problem. I mean, that's the problem that we face because they want to centralize everything,
Right.
so they can control it. And that's why the guy that wrote I'm not going to forget his name now. The guy that wrote the book on radicals, Rules for Radicals.
Saul Alinsky.
Yeah, thank you. Well, his mentor was Al Capone,
Wow.
and Al Capone's sidekick, whose name also escapes me, but he was a famous guy. And he said they taught me everything I needed to know. And you wonder, well, what's that mean? And then you realize, of course, the mob would want to be socialists because they don't want any competition. They've climbed their way to the top. They shot and killed their way to the top. Now they're at the top. I don't want any more competition, so let's just settle everything right now and freeze it right now in the moment with me on top, you guys on the bottom. And that's why the mob and socialism go hand in hand. People who observed the socialism radical things that were going on in the San Francisco Bay Area in the 1970s, for instance. There's a bunch of really good books about what happened. What happened is these radicals, they were mostly rich kids, went to San Francisco, and then they started getting into the prison system to help the prisoners. Well, the prisoners were like, yeah, all right, yeah, come on in. Yeah. And then, they took a total advantage of them, killed a lot of them, murdered them. And then at the very end of this radicalization that occurred in the Bay Area, so you'd go to a funeral of a radical who died, and there would be a bunch of guys dressed up like gangsters. Because the gangsters and the radicals work together, and they symbiotically feed off of each other, and so the gangsters feed the radicals money, and then they control the elections. Hey, where's this going? And then once they control the elections, they're in control of everything. They'll never have another opponent. The first thing they buy off is the judges, the cops, and the newspapers, TV stations, or whatever. And do what they do. I mean, this is what you do. You're a businessman, and that's what this is. It's business. And so that's where we are. We're at a stage where, if we don't cooperate, they're going to throw a rock through our window and then show up at our house the next day and say, hey, for $1,000 a month, I'll make sure that the window doesn't get broken again. That's the stage we're at right now.
Like a protection scheme, it sounds like.
It is, yes.
So,
yeah, on a nationwide scale.
So with these agent provocateurs that we've seen evidence, increasingly they seem to be out in the open, these agent provocateurs, these crisis actors that make these false flags come to life in the news for us. Now,
well, I disagree on one thing you said. They are not being more out in the open. We are more perceptive and can see it.
Okay.
Because that's actually
good.
something I wanted to talk to you about, because I was listening to your podcast the other day where you were talking about how they are being more wide open. Things are, they are being more out wide. But I would actually agree. I think the perception the perception thing is starting to come into effect. And I do think now that we're officially anchored in the age of Aquarius, we actually got truly anchored back on the equinox this week. I think now the perceptive frequencies are going to kick in even more, and I'm hoping at this point we have more of a collective awakening going on. And the one thing I heard you say also is you said they're operating outside of the boundaries. These people. Now, do you feel personally that maybe they have access to outside of the simulatory reality? Do you think that they might have that?
I think that they, through pharmacopoeia and ancient procedures that they've studied and kept secret just to themselves, I think that they are able to manipulate our reality, and I believe that their goal is to basically, they're telling you their goal. Their goal is to usurp this reality and replace it with their new reality, a new God, a new religion, a new way of living. And this is okay. We're right on. I'm all for. Can we take a small little area and then do the experiment there and see how it goes?
Yes,
Great
right?
question. Yeah.
It's a small.
Instead of doing it on a mass scale, can we do it like science does? We do a little test here, and then if it worked, and this little society that we bombed with pharmacopoeia and all sorts of stuff turns out to be a pleasant, great place of creative people to live, then we can expand the experiment out and do it. If it doesn't, then we kind of gotta stay with what we know and what we've tried, because that is what realistic people who aren't mentally unbalanced do. And so the revolution right now that I see going on is that the mentally stable people have reached a breaking point, and they're no longer going to tolerate the vast amount of mental instability that's going on right now. They did a study recently, and they asked a lot of people. It was a big study, and they asked the question: has anyone in the health field asked you in the last 10 years if you needed to go get mental health care? And like a huge amount, like almost 2/3 of white liberal women said yes.
Wow.
Like 58% of white liberal men said yes. Like I think it was 6% of white male conservatives said yes. 6%. All right, so we're witnessing a chasm, a disparity that is gigantic, and these people are in charge of the people who aren't mentally ill. And so the people that aren't mentally ill, for a while they find it amusing. Okay, yeah, that's really funny. Yeah, yeah, right. Yeah, can we now have the meeting start? Oh yeah, we got to put up with more of your antics. Okay, yeah, okay. Can we get going now? And it never happens. So finally, the people that are mentally stable they're going to lose it. They're going to lose their shit. And then and it's not going to be murder because they're not mentally unstable. So they're not going to kill anybody. So it's going to be clever ways. Like they're going to find a way to fix a label on them so that they don't get hired. Because, frankly, the 6% that are mentally stable are doing all the hiring. They run the companies, they do everything. To be honest with you, they do almost everything. They fix your plumbing, they do your electricity, they run your companies, they deliver your food. Those are all the normal people. You can't do that work and be abnormal. No. You just can't. You got to keep a schedule. You got to know what you're doing. You can't be high on drugs. So, we're just reaching that bifurcation point now where, frankly, I've had it. I've had it. Scott Adams, I don't really like Scott Adams. He advocated the vaccine and a lot of things I don't agree with. But he came out and said some stuff that, he'd seen a poll that indicated that there was a large group of people that didn't like another group of people. And he was part of the group that nobody liked. And so he said, I don't think we should hang out with these guys anymore then.
I know what you're referring to. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, well, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I can understand that. I mean, I'm not going to do that because I have, friends that, have a lot of pigment in their skin and I want to hang out with them. But I can certainly understand how somebody living in suburbia who doesn't know a lot of people that are minorities would come away seeing a poll like that and think, oh, I'm hated, when it's not quite that die in the wool. I mean, the poll itself was questionable, and there weren't enough people and everything. But you can see that what Scott Adams is doing, because he's a smart guy, there's no doubt about that, even though I disagree with him on a lot of things, he's trolling the whole scene.
Okay.
Yes.
He's trolling the whole scene. He's making the subject all bubble up to the top where it needs to be talked about, and that's what needs to happen. And so we're watching that in society kind of percolate to the top, where the people that are mentally stable are going to say, I've had enough. And by the way, this happens a lot. I mean, in the 1840s in this country, they just started building mental asylums everywhere and loading them up with thousands and thousands of people. And, frankly, if you look at diaries of people from Europe who are visiting the United States, they're saying, oh my God, there's so many crazy people on the streets of New York. It's just scary to walk around that place, because the United States attracts the greatest and the worst,
Absolutely.
the best and the worst. And so who are the progeny of the greatest have to live with those who are the progeny of the worst. And that's the nature of life here in the United States. And, fortunately, the smart people know how to get away from everything and stay safe. And that's why they're smart.
I would have to agree. I'd have to agree with you there, Jay. So I have a question I wanted to ask you because of your specialties in the symbolism. Do you feel in some ways we are kind of being mocked right now? And what I mean, like mocked, I would say, in a way, they're making it so painstakingly obvious what's going on, the gaslighting. How do you feel about that? Do you think that is a big thing going on right now?
Oh, definitely. I think they're breaking us down mentally. Mm-hmm. That's why there actually was a red wave in the last election, but it didn't happen because they stole it. I mean, it's clearly obvious. They stole it. They admit stealing the 2020 election. All you have to do is look. They admit colluding. They admit that they all got together, state governors and media companies, and they had meetings and planned how to do the whole thing. And now we look at what Twitter and the social media companies were doing. And so this is how you incapacitate your enemy. You make them, you slowly break them down mentally until they say, what's the use? That's where they want this to go. So I would look for a big crash in 2024. I would look for arrests of people who are saying fairly innocent stuff, but that doesn't matter anymore. The lines are drawn. The mentally ill are in charge, and they can't. The thing with the mentally ill is that they can't conceive of what life is like to not be mentally ill.
Right. Yes.
But if you're not mentally ill, you can't conceive of what life is like to be mentally ill. So we're always at a disadvantage because they're going to do something erratic, and we're not going to know if I respond. If I hold them down in some way, are they going to say that I assaulted them? Right. Mm-hmm. So what do I do in a given situation with a mentally ill person? And this is what you have to start thinking about. I got a big dog. All right. So if I'm walking down the street and I'm accosted by a mentally ill person, I won't be, because they'll see the big dog and walk away. All right. So you have to find ways to do things. Like if you're in a dicey situation, you're walking down the street and you see like 3 guys staring at you down 100 yards away. One of the things that's really important to do is to do psychological tricks to get out of the situation, because you don't want to get your ass kicked. Right. So a really good thing to do is like pull out your cell phone, look at it and go, oh, and then turn around and walk back wherever you were going, right? they'll see that and think that that was a legitimate move. You weren't afraid of them, right?
Uh-huh.
You didn't express any fear of them, but you did something that made them think that you weren't doing what you're really doing, which is getting the hell out so you don't get your butt kicked, right?
Right.
And
Exactly.
so we have to start thinking that way. We have to start thinking in a way that gets us free of these really incredibly dicey situations that keep increasing. I was talking to a state trooper here in Colorado, and he said that the number of accidents that are on the highways is not only growing like crazy, but he said they are so weird. The accidents are so weird, like they could have been avoided, and it still happened. And he said, and sometimes I hate to say it, but they look deliberate, like one person deliberately, you know, boom, right?
That's interesting to hear from a highway patrol officer like that.
And I do find that interesting too, because I'm a big believer that I mean, you called it the carnival, we call it the world stage. That's what we refer to it as.
Can I butt in here just for a second? Because we're hoping that you'll come around to seeing what our hope is here, Jay, and that is that we obviously see how the leftists and the Marxists and the communists want to shape culture using their false flags and their dark symbols and their media magic. But we're kind of seeing signs that the forces of good and the forces of light learned those tactics from Stanley Kubrick and guys like you, and are putting them to use in a very quiet, off the radar kind of way.
Yeah.
To keep us safe,
Yeah.
and to round up, like the sting operation, round up the bad guys.
Yeah, that's right. And so we're reaching new conclusions right now, and one of the doctrines of the Western idea, is Christianity, and the whole basis of Christianity is that there was this guy who lived, and at 33, he died on a cross, and then he was resurrected and went to heaven.
Mm-hmm.
And three women came to visit his tomb on the Sunday. They opened up the door, and there was nothing there, just an empty cloak. So for 2,000 years, the church and all of Christianity has preached that this was this one-time event, that he was the Son of God, and the alchemists who were underground,
Right.
they would say, "Well, I beg to differ with you. I'm sorry, but there are people in this world who can do certain procedures and physically turn the bioplasma energy within the layers of their skin inwards. In other words, invert the bioplasma layers and put it inwards. And after a while of cooking, you can transform the human body. First, it'll look like a shiny crystal diamond, and then it will slowly shrink down until it gets into nothingness. And and they were put in jail, and everybody wanted to know their secret because they said that this was immortality, right? That this was the way that you gained immortality. And so, about after World War II, a lot of Westerners began. Well, no, before that, I'll take that back. Way before that, in the early 20th century, a lot of Westerners began traveling that were interested in spiritual things and religious things and all of that. Began traveling all around the world, and what they found, was the stories took a long time to get back to us. But what they found was that this transformation, has happened many times, many times. In Tibet, it happened here recently.
That's what I was going to say.
People have witnessed it, right? And so this information finally got back to a high-ranking member of the Catholic Church in about 2010. Yeah, 2010.
Wow.
He went to Tibet, and he talked to witnesses. He was about, I think, 2 days behind one of them. So he missed it by 2 days. But he came there and he saw the fingernails and the teeth and the hair, right? And and he went back to the Vatican and he told them what he had found, and that the transfiguration was not a one-time event, and that we had completely mistranslated what had happened back then, and that was an example was being shown to us about how that can happen, what that alchemical transformation is, and it's all done through symbols in the New Testament. Christ being the crystal, Mary being the water, and the whole changing of the water to wine story is say what? Jesus is at a wedding and his mom comes up to him and says, we're out of wine, and can you go over there and change the water into wine? And he does, and you're like, well, wait a minute. First off, why are you out of wine? Secondly, what are you doing making these gigantic casks? I mean, they describe it in the Bible. There are these.
All his buddies, all his 12 disciples were drinking it. That's why he shouldn't have brought him to the wedding.
I know. At that point.
No, that's exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying that the ancients had a way that we did not understand. Okay, so there's this grass. It's called phalaris grass, and it grows around meadows and in wetlands everywhere in Asia, Europe, United States, everywhere, and it's loaded with DMT, but you can't consume it because it has to go through a process before it becomes consumable.
Right.
So, but a goat or a lamb or a sheep, they could actually eat the phalaris grass, and say you wanted to. In the liturgy, there's all this talk about the changing of the blood into wine, and the the taking of the wafer, and
transmutation. What is
Transmutation.
that? Transubstantiation.
The sacrifice of the lamb, that Jesus is the Lamb of God, and all of this. Well, what they would do, honestly, is pretty simple. During the Dionysus reign before Jesus, it was the goat. And so they would pick the sacrificial goat, they would put him out in a field of phalaris grass, nail him down so he can't walk around eating phalaris grass for like 2 or 3 weeks. They would take him back, hang him upside down, sacrifice him, and then they would take the blood and they would put it in little glasses, and then eventually they realized that actually what you want to do is you want to put it in a deep red wine. So they take a wine and pour it in there, and it was super psychoactive. It's dimethyltryptamine.
Wow.
And this is what these animal sacrifices actually were.
That makes
and so it transferred from Dionysus. It transferred from Dionysus with the horned goat, who now became the devil,
right,
to Jesus with the lamb. So the lamb became the sacrificial, and of course later the church wiped all the sacrifices out, refused to put blood into the wine anymore, and put sugar water and cardboard and ruined the whole thing because they didn't understand it. Here's the upshot, though: the Catholic Church in the last few years is now saying that they understand all of this.
Really?
Very, very interesting, man. Jay, I want to ask you, what are your thoughts on DMT? What are your thoughts? I ask.
Not trying to put you on the spot.
Not trying to put you on the spot. Yeah.
No, DMT is the most powerful psychedelic known to man, but it's also one atom away from serotonin, which is our brain chemistry. And if you know how to trick your pineal gland using light and dark, you can create a super serotonin, which is essentially endogenous, that is within you, endogenous DMT. So it's a torus vortex when you do that. So you're removing the endogenous DMT from yourself, you're bringing it out into the open, and then you're reconsuming it again. So it's you with your memories and your feelings and your thoughts and your history and your parents and your schools and everything going, and then coming right back through you again with coursing through you as um, it unlocks memories that you've forgotten,
Yeah.
and it absorbs memories that you want to forget,
Wow.
and so
That's
that is and that's drug free. That's completely drug free. That's just tricking your pineal gland with. And I did a show on Reality Check, Secrets of Light and Dark. I talk all about that and how you do it, and why you need a secret society, because you need help. You're going to be in the dark for 40 days. You need somebody to give you food and, clean up your mess and whatever, give you clean clothes and all that. And, they've got to help you with the actual procedure too. So this is the beginning of all of this, because, what happened is that we had all of these methods for extracting dimethyltryptamine from the world, whether it's animal sacrifice or it was like mistletoe. You could smoke mistletoe and get DMT. I don't recommend it because it's got other toxins in it that'll really screw you
Yeah,
up.
acacia
But,
mimosa, acacia,
Yeah,
like the
acacia.
acacia bush, right?
yeah,
That's the only form we've done. So
Yeah.
yeah, and morning glory seeds have lysergic ethylamide in it. So so we lost that. The church came in, it cracked. What I'm actually saying is that the the handing out of the wine and the wafer was a psychedelic
okay,
experience
that makes a
for
way more
hundreds
sense.
of
Definitely
years.
makes a lot more
Yeah.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was the way you're the body of God, or the body of Jesus, was the entire world, and you were eating part of it, and
Okay.
then you were absorbing the organic light, the biophotonic energy, and that's what psychedelics really do, is they let you see the invisible biophotonic universe that's all around us, but that's invisible to us most of the time. But if you imbibe in just the right amounts in the proper setting, and I don't recommend anybody do this without help.
Of course.
Okay, you need help. I didn't have help because I was too young for it all, but I had a guy, my keep cool guy.
Uh-huh.
So if I took a heroic dose of mushrooms, I'm in the dark room alone at night, and I would have my friend outside the room, and he was my keep cool guy. When I started screaming and yelling, he would open the door and go, "Keep cool, guy," and close the door, right? And I go, oh
That's
yeah,
who
I'm
you
Jay
are,
Weidner.
That's Steven's my cube cool guy.
I've been his keep
Yeah,
cool guy before. I have. I
yeah,
have.
yeah. So I think that I think that psychedelics can cause a lot of casualties, and I've seen it, and that's why I stopped recommending it as a recreation. Although I never recommended it as a recreation, I always recommended it as something, as a sacrament to be revered. And I
Absolutely.
think it's at
Absolutely.
the core, very center of our mythologies and our religions and our spiritual experiences, and that knowledge is now coming up to the top, and of alchemy. I believe all of it. I believe that we had an incredible knowledge of the plant world and the animal world, because the witch is putting lizards in her things, and those lizards, they're loaded with dimethyltryptamine on their coats, and we know that now. And
Wow.
so they weren't they weren't doing things that we think they were doing. They were doing other things. Witches are actually pre um, pre patriarchal Christian women.
That would make
So they
sense.
are.
Yeah.
Yep, they were brewing their psychedelic brews, and then bringing in. We know the Temple of Eleusis wasn't a psychedelic sacrament from the Greeks for 2,000 years. So
Huh.
we know that was at the very basis of it. And if you think about it, geometry is the very first math, the very first understanding of our reality through mathematical means begins with geometry, and then abstracts itself into division and addition and all the rest.
Hmm.
Um, when you consume in the right way in the dark, a vast amount of hallucinogens, first thing you see for at least the first hour is geometry. I mean,
Absolutely.
it's
Absolutely.
one geometric form after another. So you're sitting there going, why is something trying to show this to me over and over and over and over? Right? What is it? What is it about this? And so
So,
so psychedelics are both the most powerful thing that we've discovered for psychology and spirituality, and because they've been um, the establishment has come in and made them illegal and forced them underground.
mm,
We were not able to pick up the right procedures to do them in a way that would cause. Listen, they have done vast studies now on magic mushrooms, and it's been proven that magic mushrooms cure depression. The
mhm,
only thing that they found that is a lot, I mean, antidepressants stop depression in the short term, but not in the long term.
Hmm.
I'm saying cures depression. Like the guy's all
yeah,
depressed. He was in Afghanistan, killed a bunch of people. Every day he wakes up with a nightmare. He goes back to John Hopkins where they do the mushroom research. He does it, the 8-day thing where they do it increased dosage every day. And he comes back and he's happier than ever. He gets a wife, the job, everything gets back to normal. And this has been testified by thousands of times now.
wow.
So,
That's
I
amazing.
mean,
We
it's
are
huge.
definitely fans of psilocybin, DMT, all these things, especially like you said, though, under the right supervision and help from your friends, it can be very restorative and therapeutic and long term helpful. So, one thing that we've noticed is that sometimes alchemical practices get lumped in with witchcraft. And we see these orders, these secret societies being organized, and mainstream people and normies just kind of pan them as being, oh, that's witchcraft, that's Aleister Crowley, that's Jimmy Savile, they're torturing children. How do we clear that up for folks? How can we help to, decipher, to distinguish ourselves from that crowd? And is it, have you seen
Question.
any evidence of the dark arts being practiced out there in your time in Hollywood?
Oh, yeah, that's what it is. I mean, it attracted all the dark magicians in there. What we have to do is make people understand that there is all the tools are available to us. And we've never lived in a time where we've had more availability to these incredible tools.
Right.
Not just talking about psychedelics, I'm talking about yoga and all of these different, what they call new age, which aren't, they're older age than anything that we've got in our country. But um, what we need to do is um, this is going to piss off a lot of people, but we actually need to restore moral authority. It's all right to practice these things and everything if you do it within the boundaries of a moral order. But if you practice it without the boundaries of a moral order, that's just do what you want. So when Aleister Crowley says "do what thou wilt," what he's really doing is really saying is, "I'm going to do whatever the hell I want to do, and if you don't like it, screw you."
Yeah.
Hmm.
Right? And that's beyond the boundaries of moral order. And so there's natural law. And, and I'm sorry, there is. And you can
Absolutely.
go read, you can read books, esoteric books about natural law. And there's just things that are natural. And that's the way you have to live your life. So when it came to, you know, being forced into,
Yeah.
that is like, well, that's against the natural law, so no, I can't. It
Exactly.
has nothing to do with anything else. I'm not, if you want to do it, that's fine, that's great, but, in the natural law says that, you don't take stuff that hasn't been, taken by human beings for a long time. So, that's why I eschew like smoking DMT or taking LSD. They haven't been tested for a
Hmm.
long time. So you take the natural stuff that natives have taken and all of that, and you're more apt to be on the right track. So yeah, the problem is that the and there's a show out on Prime right now called Strange Angels,
Huh.
which is Strange Angel, which is about Jack Parsons and
Okay.
Alistair Crowley, Ridley Scott. is for the producer,
Wow.
Okay.
and
We got to
it's a
watch that.
strange
Yeah, that's
show.
something. Yeah, dude.
Yeah, it's worth watching. It's a strange show because they are identifying the creature that they're worshiping as the devil, the occultists in
The
the
great
show.
beast.
Great beast.
They're saying it's the devil, and then I've only seen 2 episodes, so I can't say how far it goes. And I don't, I'll probably follow it because I'm interested in the story. But I just found it interesting because usually, it's Thelma, it's Alway. They got a name for whatever it is they're doing,
Hmm.
right? But they never actually say the devil. And here we have a major Hollywood production of a true story. I mean, this really happened, all of this. And uh and they're saying that it's the devil behind it. So it's almost like they're coming out of the closet. They say, oh, you go, okay, the devil, all right.
So
They're not.
on that, it's a great segue into what I wanted to ask you next about because when you were describing the swirling vortex of energy coming out, that reminded me of the scene towards the end of your film, The Last Avatar, when Kalki's in the cave. And I was
Yeah.
just wondering how you shot that, or can you say anything interesting for us about that scene?
Well, I took a little bit of money a long, long way. I'll put it to you that way.
I could tell.
Uh, so I had a guy. What I did was I did a whole bunch of research into how I was going to do the effects and everything. So I did all the groundwork myself, but I still couldn't do it because I don't know how to do, digital effects. I mean, I
Right.
just don't know. I don't have 5 year lead time to learn it. And so, I couldn't pay for it. So I went out, oh, that'll be 180,000. And I was like, yeah. Then I go, how much? 150,000. I can do that
Wow.
for 300,000. So finally I found a guy who's on welfare in, Amsterdam.
Okay.
He's on welfare in Amsterdam, and I said, can you do it? And he had a real thick accent. He goes, yeah, I can do it. And I said, so how much? He said, you buy me Macintosh, I'll do it. I said, what?
That's a pretty good deal.
I'll take
It was a great deal, and he did a really good job. And
It was like an
yeah,
homage to Alex Gray's work, maybe.
he was. That's
Yeah.
exactly right.
Exactly.
Alex, an old friend of mine, and so we took all of his paintings, and me and the guy laid them all out, and I showed him how I wanted it to go,
You
and
did a great job.
You did a great
yeah,
job.
he did a great
For the
job.
cost of a laptop, huh?
I'll tell you,
Yeah.
man. Those are the best deals sometimes. So the one thing that I really want to talk to you about here, Jay, is you have a knack for seeing things, and I guess giving a perspective that is unique in and of itself. Did what kind of set you off on your journey, if you don't mind me asking? Like, what kind of was really your, I call it a burning bush moment. We all have that kind
Or,
of.
yeah, red pill or
Yeah.
Paul on the road to Damascus, where the
Palm.
scales fall from your eyes. Anything like that out there?
Yeah.
Yeah. When I was in I'd always been curious and an avid reader, and but I was basically a materialist, and I believed in science, and and I didn't like anything that smelled of spirit or the supernatural or anything like that. And I was a rock hound, and I was living in Southern California, and I'd heard that the certain desert out near the Mojave Desert had these incredible rocks that I was going to be looking for. So I went up in my Land Cruiser, listening to Philip Glass, and went out into this area, and I wasn't having much luck, and it was about 110 degrees, and I was really hot. My air conditioner wasn't working, and I looked up at the top of this mountain that was in front of me, and I saw all these trees growing. And I could see the dirt road that could get me up there if I four-wheel drived it. So I said, well, I'm going to go. I bet it's about 20 degrees cooler up there. I'm going to go up there. So I got my Land Cruiser and I drove up to the top of it, and there was nobody there. It was like an island of trees and streams and serenity that you could only get to in like a Land Cruiser. And it was a weekday, and there was, nobody there. There was just nobody there. I couldn't believe it. So, I was like, wow. So I parked my car and I got out and set up my tent and everything. And I'm walking around, hiking around, and it had rained, I guess, the night before. Rain gathers around these mountaintops in the southwest, but nowhere else. Still stays a desert. But the rain gathers, so it gets sucked up onto the mountaintop. And I looked out underneath this black oak tree, and there was about, I'd say, 60 to 100 little mushrooms. Liberty caps are called. They're about this
Wow.
big.
Oh wow.
They look like the Liberty Bell, sort of, right? And I was a mushroom hound, so I knew what they were. So I got out my pocket knife and I cut a whole bunch up, and I was like, should I fry them up for dinner? What am I going to do with these? And then, I've been, I knew Terrence McKenna, and he's always talking about taking, a heroic dose on an empty stomach, and I hadn't eaten in like at least 36 hours.
Wow.
So I said, okay. So I got my canteen out and I just took it, drank, took it down fully, not really fully understanding what was about to happen, but I had, a trip that where I was shown my future. Um, I was told that I would be running a major media company and that I would be doing all this revolutionary work that would really have a big effect on the world, and that I needed to stay the course and don't listen to anybody. And I shown all these visions of what Kundalini was, and alchemy and the diamond body, and it went on for hours. It felt like 18 days, but it
Wow.
was only 4 hours. But anyway, I came out of the experience and I was completely drenched, and I really had to interact with an intelligence, not me, another intelligence who was imparting all this stuff to me. And I went home and I had a job, a really boring job in Hollywood, and I was called a fixer.
Huh.
So all I did was fix scripts, because people were so illiterate they couldn't write scripts. So I found somebody who could. And so I went home, and about 3 weeks later, I quit my job, and I got out and I moved to the Pacific Northwest from LA. I came to realize immediately that I was in a toxic situation. I'd had many friends who had met bad ends, you might say,
Uh,
through both violence and drugs. And I kept thinking I don't want anything to do with this, and I left. And then everything just kind of went the way I wanted it to be for the rest of my life, and that's the way it's always been ever since that moment. And I found Phil Canelli, about 4 months later, who became my mentor in alchemy, and everything just kind of fell in line as if I had been given some kind of opening into this realm, and that realm was coming down and helping me. And one of the things that it told me, it said that it told me, this voice, this entity said that I was foolishly courageous. It said to me, and I was. When I was young, I was foolishly courageous. I did things that were crazy. Now I'm thinking about it. What would I do that for? Why? Not risking anybody else's life, but my own.
Mm-hmm.
Frequently, so you're foolishly courageous, but nature and the universe loves courage
Yes.
and breaks down barriers through the courageous. And with that, I decided, okay, I'm not going to be foolishly courageous anymore. I'm going to take my courageousness and pipe it into a direction that makes sense, that gives me something back. Instead of clinging off the side of a mountain with a camera and almost dying, I'm going to try to actually make some money here with all this. So, that was a great and amazing moment in my life. And I was in my early 30s. And as, I like to say, it was a moment that I've never gotten over. And it was a very a treasuring me that I've never been able to recreate. By the way, I've tried
huh.
to recreate
I bet.
the bliss that was there in this
I can imagine.
experience, this effervescence. The plasma universe was everywhere. I could see the auras around the trees and around the birds, and I knew that there was this thing. And I even said, "What's the future? What's going to be? What's this planet going to be like?" And so this had been in the early '80s. So I said, "What's the future going to be like in 50 years?" And they said, they showed me a world where an ice age was coming. And I went, really? An ice age? And for years I was like, they must have told me wrong, because where global warming is happening. But then as I delved into it and looked at it, I realized that, yeah, actually, and we have really cold weather here today. I mean, really cold,
Yeah.
and it's freezing out there. And I even had to bring my dog in, and so it was an amazing experience. It taught me that time is this weird elastic thing, and that we each have our own time bubble where everything that's happened has already happened, and that if you're perceptive, you can go to different places in your life and check things out. So 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 in this trip, I was bouncing around to different parts of my life, seeing what they would be like, and in the past too, seeing trauma events and all sorts of things from my past. And one of the things I saw was that I was going to be running this very odd media company, and so a year and a half later, after the experience, I got asked by a guy who had a radio station if I wanted to have a job at a radio station. I thought this was it, so I said yeah. So I got a 6-hour-a-week radio show where I met Terrence McKenna and everybody, and did a wild, crazy ass radio show, which I personally believe became the format of this combination of like spirituality and conspiracy. Because you see, I always thought that conspiracy theorists are deeply spiritual. And the reason I say that is because they see the interconnections between things. And so they'll say, hey, did you know this and that and this and that? And when the normies are like, what? What? What are you talking about? Right? But you see it, and you can prove it too. You say, no, look, I can prove this. And they're like, okay, yeah, whatever. But, then they label you.
Can I ask you to speculate on something, Jay? So you mentioned watching the Zapruder film, and that filmmakers could see something different about that Zapruder film, and that Oliver Stone likely saw it but wasn't able to talk about it completely. But the question is, if it's true, this conspiracy theory that perhaps this was a production, and why didn't we see NBC's cameras, ABC's, and CBS cameras out there? It was just this one film that survived that very important event. Now, the question is, where does a John go after that event? And where does a Robert go after that event? You know what I'm saying? It's do they go into the ether? Do they go underground?
No, I think that John probably went to Aristotle and Nassau's Island in the Mediterranean.
Okay.
And then Jackie came along later, although their marriage was breaking up. But JFK's girlfriend, I'm going to forget her name now, Pinchot, Mary Pinchot, whose husband was the head of the CIA. They divorced. She was gorgeous. She died in a guy killed her on a walkway in D.C. about 2 months after JFK died. A very suspicious murder. So I think that she, devised her murder and then ran off to be with JFK. JFK had, I forget the name of it, Addison's disease, and he only had a few years left, and he wanted to have fun. He certainly didn't want to be president.
Right.
And LBJ was more than willing to fill the void. And so, that's what it was. And there's no doubt. There's another even better film out. I have it saved here on my computer, where they took the same software, only did a much better job than the film I showed of, doing that thing there they do with old movies where they can, imagine the inner frames and colorize the whole thing. And it's even better. In fact, it's hilarious. It goes like this, spark. It looks like, there's no way a high-powered rifle. Come on, a bullet is this long on a high-powered rifle.
What did you call that thing that was plastered to as
squib? It's a squib. It's a Hollywood device to simulate a bullet. Kubrick used a bunch of squibs in Paths of Glory, and they were invented in '53. I think he made that film in '56, and one of the first people to use squibs. So somebody told Jack about the squib. In May of '63, the FBI informant recorded a top mafia assassin saying that the hit had been put out by the Chicago mob on JFK. He had to tell Kennedy. I mean, the FBI had to tell him. They'd be compelled to go back there and say, listen, they're going to put a hit on you. And he's like, well, what do I do? What do I do? And he went to somebody. He went to somebody who knew their stuff in Hollywood early enough, because remember, it was only invented 10 years before, and hardly any Hollywood films had used squibs, maybe 4 or 5 by 1963. So he went to somebody who knew squibs, and they said, hey, I got a flesh-colored squib here. It's got a sticky bottom on it. You just stick it here like that. It'll stand there. You got the chain, pull the chain, and that'll ignite the gunpowder and look just like blood, and bone fragments are flying out everywhere. And fake your assassination, get the hell out of there. So Oswald killed 2 people on November 22nd, 1963, the story says. One is JFK. The other one was Officer J.D. Tippit. J.D. Tippit, I don't have his picture here in front of me, J.D. Tippit was known as JFK on the Dallas Police Force. Why? Because he was a dead ringer for John F. Kennedy.
Wow.
So, amazing coincidence. Lee Harvey Oswald kills only 2 people in Dallas on that day, and they're dead ringers for each other. Amazing story. So, who's at Parkland Hospital getting operated on? It's J.D. Tippit. All you have to do is change out so you shoot him earlier. I know people love Kennedy. Oh, I can't believe he'd be involved in killing. So you shoot J.D. Tippit earlier, say around 10, right? You put him in the same exact suit that JFK's wearing, right? So you have 2 suits. You probably lay him on the floor of the limousine where we got some kind of trap door to put him in the trunk. That's probably where JFK escapes, because he goes right down. You never see him again. The guy on the slab in the autopsy is J.D. Tippit. You can see it's not JFK if you look really close. Certain little differences in the nose and the lips. And that's the story. And he faked his murder. If you look at the interviews with leaders of the mob after the JFK assassination, they talked. The Johnny Rosselli, these guys, they talked. You'll see that there's this overwhelming thing that they all say. Well, it wasn't my guys that did it, so I'm thinking it might have been those guys. And they're all saying the same thing, which is exactly what you would want, right? If you're trying to get your ass shot.
It's like that Spider-Man meme where they're all pointing at each other. They're all like, so.
Oh, man.
No, so it's actually a brilliant. My goal before I go for this world is to try to get this out. And the reason I want it out is because it's the sine qua non of what this reality is, the fakeness of this reality. We've been traumatized for 60 years now coming up. This year, on this assassination, the whole country traumatized. My parents' generation was like, my mom cried for weeks after the Kennedy assassination.
Yeah.
She was so traumatized by it. And, they didn't hide the Zapruder film because they didn't want you to see that Kennedy was shot from the front, back, side. Or they hid it because they didn't want you to see the squib. And
very interesting.
Yeah, and I love Oliver Stone. He's one of my favorite filmmakers, but he cut around the squib in the movie JFK. There's 2 seconds or so where first he puts the squib on his cheek. You can clearly see him do it. He takes his hand down, and for 2 seconds or 18 frames a second, 36 frames, this squib is sitting there obviously on his face, right? And Oliver Stone cut those 18 seconds out. So he cuts away right to the gunshot. So he clearly saw it, and he went, whoa, I know what that is. I worked with those in Platoon, right? And I can't show this. I've got $40 million invested in this movie, right?
Have you ever met any of the Stones, Oliver or his son Sean?
Sean's a good friend of mine. In fact, I'd like to talk to Sean about this theory, because I don't think he knows about it. And when I knew him, I knew the theory, but I didn't want to. I didn't want me, you know how it is. I didn't want him to hate me for my theory. But now I'm okay with it, and it's out. And what's really funny about it is I put this out finally about 9 months ago on Reality, and I used the really good M.K. Davis high quality film, the first really good high quality Zapruder film. But now we have a better one. So. I thought to myself after I got off, after I did it, I went, this is pretty shocking. This is going to have an effect. There's just no doubt. And I don't know what that effect could be. less than 2 weeks later, unscheduled, on Joe Rogan is Oliver Stone for 3 hours talking about the JFK, his film JFK. Not mentioning anything I came up with,
Right.
but but getting all of this like great credit for being one of the leaders in the JFK thing. And and here's another thing I want to say is for the last 3 or 4 years, on around November 22nd, there isn't much mention of the JFK assassination. There hasn't been. It's faded out. Nobody
Yeah.
cares about it, right? But not last year. No, November 22nd, 2022. Tucker was talking about it. Sean Hannity was talking about it.
Wow.
All of a sudden, there's all this big news, and they're blaming the CIA. I don't support the CIA at all. You guys know I don't, but
Yeah.
they had nothing to do with it.
Right.
They had nothing to do with it.
It's
And now we know why JFK told the Secret Service to stay back.
Well, do you think it's possible that the CIA might be in on some of these productions that we call the news?
I would.
Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Going back a long way, too. Going back to, as my research would say, going back to at least the 70s, they've been faking events
Right.
or enhancing events also. They'll take a regular event, whether they have something to do with it or not, and they will enhance on it. They'll begin creating collateral things, like during the Boston Marathon bombings,
right.
the JFK Museum got bombed, right? But nobody talks about that. Nobody talks about a big hole was blown in the side of the JFK Museum. What was going on there?
What was going on
Hundreds
there?
of murder films were being taken.
So this is making me very optimistic that it's possible that if the threat can be eliminated, we might see people rise from the dead that have been missing from us or murdered. Do you catch my drift there?
Yeah, I think what's about to happen, which I think is really optimistic, is that we're moving into a different phase of the plasmasphere that we're at, with our reality is part of. And the vibration is going to shift. And that's what's really causing everybody to wake up. This is what causing them to freak out and put out so much disinformation, because they're trying to obfuscate everything that's going on to make it so it's all murky and we can't see the forest for the trees. And your generation is being really screwed over with the economy, and which is outrageous. And but they got to do everything they can to put the brakes on the Great Awakening, and that's what's going on. And so, and it's a cacophony. It's not just one thing. It's a swirling mass of different things all being formed at the same time. Different kinds of realities being coalescing, and it's just like the story I was telling you about with Jesus as a light body. If it's possible for this to happen, then we have absolute proof that we have a get out of jail card free, get out of jail free card too.
Yeah, that is the hope that Jesus, whoever he was, kind of led the example of what it looks like to be in a scene, to ascend.
Yeah, and these other masters that we've looked into their histories, they have the same pattern of deep affinity with animals and people, and poor people, and compassion. And so I'm not a scientist. There's something about it. There's something about the way that they're living their life which precedes this transformation. So I think that's one of the things that why they tempt us into the darkness, is because if enough people ascend into this other phase, into this plasma reality, they begin having a larger and larger effect. So they have to stop these mutations from happening, and the only way they can do that is to confuse us spiritually, which they are.
And I would have to agree. Especially through my own experiences I've had, seeing how fabricated this reality truly is. I think that I kind of coin it as you're searching for the little bits of truth in a sea of lies. Would you think?
Yeah.
Would you think that kind of suits it pretty well there, Jay?
Yeah, you get what you do is you just drill down. So you hear something that sounds fantastic, pick an aspect of it and just start drilling down. If you drill down, it turns out to vanish into BS, then probably the whole rest of the construct is BS, and you go on to your next one. But you're going to eventually drill down, and you're going to find that diamond, and you're going to, holy smoke, this is actually real. And then you'll begin more earnest drill downs. As you drill down more, you'll not drill down in false, like false oil wells and stuff. That will get less and less until pretty soon almost all of your drill downs have a way and a method that will give you information that you can use. And so whether it's monetary drill downs or alternative history drill downs or alchemical drill downs, you've got to be able to go down that hole all the way and be fearless. That's the way it is.
And I would agree. So since I've heard you talk about this, because I've heard about the diamond body, I've actually heard it as the rainbow body from the
Same thing.
Tibetan Buddhist tradition. Do you feel that the rhombohedron crystals in the pineal gland and the cerebral spinal fluid have anything to do with actually activating this ascended state, or are these just a different auxiliary thing that you can access for other talents?
No, those are the tools that you need to do it. You've got to learn how to control them and to use your own endogenous secretions to create that donut effect that causes it to create a feedback loop, which then causes the biophotons to increase. And so you want to do things that increases your biophotonic activity. We know that ecstatic dancing, prayer, meditation, because we can detect biophotons. They increase dramatically, especially like Sufi type of dancing, deep meditation, sun gazing, although do it with somebody that knows what they're doing because you can hurt yourself. There's all sorts of ways to increase your biophotonic activity. You got to create within your living space a place of where the lights are of a certain texture and color, and you have certain artifacts in your house, and you play music that's a certain kind of phasing type of music that it pulsates with you, and you've got to create this kind of whole lifestyle. You got to eat high quality food, you got to drink high quality water, and go out and get a lot of sunshine, get a lot of fresh air. Don't listen to anybody telling you that sunshine is bad for you. That is BS. That's bullshit. Go out and get as much sunshine as you can. Get your eyes filled with it. Walk out into nature, breathe, hang out with animals, hang out with loving people, and listen to great music.
Hey, you want to know what I really like how you put it there, because I'm really big on having intaking the highest quality nutrients and food as part of being the awakening as well. It helps elevate your body to that state of a better mental health, and it also, with that comes your better spiritual health. I really
well, I'm a master gardener, so I'm just starting my new garden right now, and I already got a lot of stuff already going. And I highly recommend that you grow a lot of your own food because it contains a lot more light than store-bought food. Biophotons. We're all light bodies. I'll just end with that, okay? Every human is a light body. Every human has biophotons. Okay. Every human has a potential for a light body, for an alchemical release of the spirit into the higher realms.
Do you need to take off? We're an hour and 8 minutes in. I'd have one more question for you if you have time.
Sure. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. It has to do with the last avatar, Kalki, the Sutra Yuga, changing from the Kali Yuga, and the Age of Aquarius. Now, you mentioned in one of your podcasts that you thought it might be David Icke. This is 2 years ago, so have you changed your thinking on that? What's your latest thought about Kalki and the coming age?
Well, after when I showed the last avatar at several different showings, I had the same exact event happen at every one of them, happened about 6 or 7 times, in which a young male would come up to me and say that they were Kalki. And then I started realizing, well, wait a minute, to be extremely effective, perhaps the form needs to break into several different, thousand aspects for it to be effective in this world. Instead of one centralized figure, perhaps it's going to outsmart everyone and create thousands of young Kalkis who are going to be doing everything that Kalki would be doing, only now on a much wider, deeper level, because one guy can't be as effective. And I actually think that is what's going on. I think there's and it's among young men. It's not that, Kali is the female version, but among young men, I see an emergence of a fearless warrior type who doesn't, like Kalki, isn't here to teach. Not here to not gonna waste your time teaching. If you don't know, I don't care. Is their attitude, right? And that's good. That's a good thing, because you don't want to waste your time on a bunch of people that don't care. So just get rid of the people that aren't awake and only deal with the people that are awake. Make sure that you're waking up the people that are awake so they're even more awake. And people have to understand that, especially men, young men especially, you really got to start paying attention to your intuition. Now, not always, because you don't want to get burned. Sometimes you'll do it and you're going to get burned, But if you feel like something is wrong, don't do it. If you feel that something is absolutely right, but it's a pain in the ass, I think you should still do it. And so, you got to guide yourself through life like that. And when you are wrong, you got to do a deep examination of why you followed your intuition and it led you astray. And you'll normally see that it wasn't the intuition. It was either you got greedy or lustful or something, and that led you astray. It wasn't the intuition. That girl could have been a very nice girl if you had treated her the right way. So, so that's kind of my attitude is that reality is an elastic fabric that surrounds each person, and you are in control of that reality, and you can make it and you can make it do whatever you want it to do. And it's not like magic, it's more like just being super aware, right? It's like there was a study that they did years ago. And what they did was they found 1,000 people, and they asked them, like, it was more than that, and they asked, are you a lucky person or are you an unlucky person? And they took the lucky people, they put them in one place, and took the unlucky people and put them in another place. And they gave each of them, brought them in a room, gave them a magazine, and said, here, why don't you spend 20 minutes perusing the magazine, and we'll come back and talk about it, right? And they folded up a $20 bill and tucked it into the magazine somewhere, right? And they came back and they said, so anything unusual about the magazine, anything you see? And it was like 100% of the lucky people said, yeah, I found this $20 bill in there, right? And 100% of the unlucky people said, nope, didn't see a thing.
Wow.
Right? Yeah, so lucky people aren't lucky. They're more perceptive. They're looking around at things. I can't tell you how many people come up to me and go, how come you see UFOs all the time and I never see them? And I go, because I'm looking.
And you live in Crestone, so that's where they love to hang out.
They do. They really do. But, you do have to look. You have to go out at night with binoculars and, look around and look at the sky, and eventually you'll see something weird. But, they're all inside watching TV, and you're not. So that's the thing. That's the difference between, perceptive people and not perceptive people. So, and, you got to work hard. And that's the other thing. If you work hard, you will succeed. I guarantee it. I tell everybody that if you got a skill and you keep doing that skill and you get better and better at it, whatever it is, you're going to get noticed eventually. eventually somebody's going to go, that guy over there, he does this all the time. So he must know what he's doing. So bring him over here, and then how much can I pay you to do what I need, and that's what you have to do. So we need to return to hard work and fearlessness about that, and not hard work like working for the man. I'm talking about hard work like gardening and construction of your house and taking care of yourself. You got to build a community. Everybody needs to be working on community right now and getting together with your friends and having weekly and monthly meetings. And what are you going to do in each circumstance? And run down each circumstance. What are we going to do if this happens? And can we help each other? And that's what we have to do from now on. We are on our own. The apocalypse is here. It's not going to get better. It's going to get worse. I can tell you stories that make your hair stand on end. Mm-hmm. Right now, one of the biggest problems that we're facing in this world is they're stealing all the copper wires because they can get so much money for the copper. We're all going to be out of electricity because out here in the country, it's so easy to steal, 300 yards of copper wire in like 15 minutes, right?
Jeez.
You just got a machete and whack it down, and right, you're done. And so we're facing infrastructure problems of magnitude that we cannot even imagine. How we're going to repair this, is even another problem. So inside the chaos of the cymatics vibration, when it moves from one stable state of geometry to another stable state of geometry, there's always this brief period of utter and complete collapse and chaos before it reforms. And that's what we're in right now.
I love that.
Well, let's be like the phoenix and rise from the ashes, right?
I think that's a good one.
And I think we ought to move to Crestone. Sounds like.
Well, I don't know if you know the Dome House out there, Jay. I stayed in that actually with my wife.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
The Zen Center?
Yep. Right over there. Yep. We actually stayed there.
That was Keith Critchlow. Keith Critchlow was a sacred geometry guy. Taught Robert Lawler and all the top, John Michel. He taught all the top sacred geometry people there what sacred geometry was, and he built that for it wasn't the Zen Center then. It was called Findhorn. It was an Irish kind of a spirituality place. But that is a beautiful dome.
Oh, yes, it is. Yes, it is. That was good.
Well, Jay, thanks so much for being
Thank
on
you,
the show,
Jay.
man.
Yeah.
My head is
Thanks for having
filled
me.
with new ideas.
Appreciate it.
Wow, man, it was really nice to actually get to sit down and talk with you and hear your perspective on things. You have definitely contributed and shaped the awakening movement today. And
Absolutely.
you have definitely shaped our opinions and our thoughts and our theories as well. So,
well, good. Spread the word.
Hopefully we can talk again soon.
Yeah, could you send me a copy of this?
of course I can. Most certainly.
Definitely.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, of course, Jay. Well, you want to know what? Thanks for coming on again.
Yeah.
We really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule, sitting down and talk with us here. And we
look forward to more projects coming out on
Yeah.
Gaia, or maybe you got anything that you want to mention that you're working on, or is it a secret?
I got something, but I can't mention, but it's going to be.
Oh, man.
That's good. That's good.
I got it.
Good.
Yep.
Well, we're just
All
going to
right.
wait
All
and
right.
see
All right.
then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Eagerly awaiting.
Too early.
Well, we'll stay tuned.
All right.
All right.
See you guys.
Jay,
Thanks.
thank you, man. Have
Send
a
me
good
one.
one.
You too.
We say set the captives free. Is it
Set
still
the
on
captives free. No, we're
right.
still streaming,
there?
but
We're still streaming. Okay.
hold on, guys. We're going to bring the camera back. All right, guys. That was a really super cool, freaking excellent interview with Jay Weidner. I'm actually kind of a little starstruck right now.
Yeah, I'm on cloud nine.
Yeah, I'm actually a little bit starstruck right now to actually sit and talk with somebody of his magnitude and his expertise and his talents. And
just to shake the hands that he's shaking, like Terrence McKenna, David Icke, Cliff High, and those are just people that that we like in the truther community. But think about all the Hollywood people that he's met and worked with. That's amazing stuff.
Well, you want to know what? Now that he's even played it, because I actually wanted to ask him, about Ben too, because he brought up the global cooling. I didn't get a chance to run that by him, but maybe what we're going to start doing, guys, is having a BG cast or a BG tap meetup of some kind, doing like a weekly.
I'd love that.
A weekly meeting of some kind, guys. Yeah, to get everybody community involved here in Colorado. At least get a network out here in the Denver area and around. So I think that would actually be beneficial to the cause, and we're going to start implementing that.
Absolutely. Well, let's not gild the lily. This has been a great episode.
Yes, let's not gild the lily indeed. Yes.
Let's get it out there.
All righty, y'all. Much love. Thanks for joining us again.
Set the captives free.
Set the captives free. We'll see you next Saturday, and I'll be back Wednesday, guys. Have a good one.